All right, good morning, everybody. We are on chapter 12, and I have a confession. Nadine was right. Last week, I don't know what was happening to me. I think it was because I started my PowerPoint at 11 o'clock at night. It's probably not a good idea. So I put the first verse, I put the first verse of chapter 12 on there, and then I flipped back to 11. Don't know how I did that. Just don't. So,
Hey,
so we're going to do it again.
mysteries of life.
So here we are.
And a sneak preview, wasn't it?
I thought of that. So you guys remember the story? Sort of.
Yep.
Okay. So we're actually starting with the transfiguration, I think. Am I doing this right again? Okay. All right.
You're in the right place.
Okay. Thank you. So 6 days later, and this is after all these healings that we've been talking about, so remember he went to the Jews and he healed, and then he went to the Gentiles and he healed, and he kept giving the same lessons to both sides, basically what does it mean to heal? And so here we are now, 6 days later. Jesus took Peter and James and John up to the mountain, and there he was transfigured before them. That's a very interesting term that is used a lot in Christian churches. And his clothes became dazzling white, such as no one on earth could bleach them, which I thought was interesting, this version. So when you guys hear the word transfiguration, what do you think of? What do you associate with when you hear transformation? Yes, transfiguration, sorry.
I think I first heard that word once in a while, I listen to the Catholic station. And
Okay.
The Catholics use that word a lot.
I would think they would, yeah. Because it is that old of a term, it is a term
Yeah.
that I think, the early Christian church, which would be the Catholics, was really talking about what does it mean for the transfiguration of Christ, and in this sense, he becomes dazzling white. Anybody else want to take a shot at what does it mean to you, transfiguration, before we go on?
I always associate it with mountaintop experience, having some coming into the presence of God and stuff like that.
Yeah, kind of that glow.
And it happened to Moses.
It happened to Moses. That's right. We're going to get to
me,
that.
It means that they're more full of spirit than anybody can hold, and it just
Shines
through
out.
them, yeah.
Okay, all right, I like that.
It also reminds me of sometimes when you see a little child who is just having a delightful time.
Yeah,
through their eyes and their face,
Yeah.
they just beam.
I think that's why we like those videos on Facebook that have the little children giggling,
Yeah.
and they're like rolling, and they're just giggling and giggling. It's all the parents are. This is what we do too. Whenever you have a little child and they're laughing, everybody just sits around and watches, because that's contagious for us.
Well, it also makes me think of pregnant women.
Ah, yeah.
They're supposed to have a glow.
There is a glow until they get sick. There is a glow.
Yeah.
Some of them would say that's from the sickness.
Yes, that could be.
Okay, so then, Coral, you were talking about this. So Elijah and Moses appears talking to them, and Peter, and of course Peter gets things wrong again. He says to Jesus, "Hey, let's get these three dwellings." In one version, the authors call it a tabernacle. He wants to honor these three by giving them a tabernacle. And part of the reason why he said that is because, these two guys show up and start talking to Jesus, and they're terrified. So then a cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud there came a voice. "This is my son, the beloved. Listen to him." And then they only saw Jesus. So it's like this, you imagine this flash. This is, talk about a mountaintop experience. That's what they're all very confused by it. So, and just like you said, Coral, and I like how our authors are kind of referring us back to the Old Testament quite a bit to say, Mark is actually teaching, the first century Jews, the lesson that Jesus brought as it relates to the Old Testament, which is kind of fascinating. So if you look back at Exodus 24, it's very similar. The Lord said to Moses, "Come up to me on the mountain and wait there." And that's where he was going to give them the tablets. He set out, he went up to the mountain, and then to the elders, he had said, "Wait here, we come to you again." Aaron stayed back with him, if you remember. If you have a dispute, go to them. Moses is going to the mountaintop. So he goes up this mountaintop, and the cloud covered the mountain. The glory of the Lord settled on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it for 6 days. And on the seventh day, he called to Moses out of the cloud. Now here we go. Now the appearance of the glory of the Lord was like a devouring fire on the top of the mountain in the sight of the people of Israel. Moses entered the cloud, went up on the mountain, and he was there for 40 days and 40 nights. And when he came down with the 2 tablets, and Moses did not know it, but that the skin of his face shone because he had been talking with God. And when Aaron and all the Israelites saw this, they were afraid to come near him. But Moses called to them, and Aaron and all the leaders of the congregation returned to him, and Moses spoke with them. Isn't it interesting how similar these stories are? So afterwards, all the Israelites came near, and that's when he gave them the commandments. And then I thought it was interesting that he put a veil on his face. So Moses, it almost seems to me that Moses's face was kind of permanently changed. So whenever he went up to the Lord to speak to him, he would take the veil off. And then when he came back out, he would put his veil back on. So I don't know. Is that how you guys read that? It just kind of symbolizes once again the transfiguration of a face when someone speaks to God. So it's like, that is that glow, that is that, otherworldly experience when Moses was speaking to God, and then people recognized it. And that is what Mark is talking about in this particular chapter of Mark. So our authors talk about how the shining, that was interesting to me. I'm not sure why. Does anybody have an explanation?
That doesn't.
The white clothes, because he wasn't in white clothes when he was crucified. What would that mean? Anybody? Oh, great. I'm gonna have to go look it up.
Well, I'm just thinking, okay, when we baptize somebody, why do I wear white pants and white shirt? Why does the people, kids, whatever?
Yeah.
Not always done. Nobody says have to do that.
But that is our tradition.
But but why? What is the symbol of that? Is what I'm asking myself.
My thought whenever I baptize people is that it's more of like a symbol of purity. You're purifying the child, and you want to be that symbol of purity. I would not have thought of martyrdom whenever I was baptizing someone.
Yeah, the whiteness to me symbolizes not martyrdom, but rather purity.
Yeah.
So I think that's.
So maybe it was just, once again, they're talking about first century Jews, so I'll see if I can look it up. Or I bet you Paul's looking it up right now. I don't know. He's quiet. All right.
I was looking it up and I haven't found it.
Okay, so.
Jane?
Okay. See, I know you.
I was looking it up,
If you find it.
I haven't found anything that says that it has to do with martyrdom. It's mostly a symbol of, like you say, purity and righteousness. And so it's kind of associated with people who ascend to sainthood and become saints in heaven.
Maybe that's what they mean, is martyrdom is ascending to sainthood.
Yeah.
That he was going to.
Were martyred.
Yeah, he was going to ascend
I
soon.
found this in Wikipedia. It said there were 3 colors for the 3 degrees by Pope Gregory. Let's see, where did it go to? Anyway, it was, I lost it. Why doesn't it show up now?
All right, when you find it, let us know.
Okay.
So,
To me, the color that symbolizes martyrdom would be red.
yeah, or black, when we think of Good Friday.
Yeah.
I don't know. I do think the martyrs are the saints, so maybe that's,
It
Yeah.
looks like most of the references to white robes, it comes from the book of Revelation and has to do with the martyrs in heaven, seeking justice, but they're issued a white robe when they get to heaven.
oh, there you go. And our authors actually do mention Revelation,
Yeah.
which I did not look up because I'm afraid of that book.
We studied it already once, so
Was I there? I
Okay.
blocked it out.
So-
you must have.
According to Pope Gregory, there were 3 degrees of martyrdom, designated by the colors red, blue, or green and white.
Well, there you go.
Red martyr was due to torture or violent death by religious persecution. The term white martyrdom was used by the church father Jerome for those such as desert hermits who aspired to the conditions of through strict asceticism. Blue or green involved the denial of desires through fasting. Well,
It's like way too complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, and Revelation would have come after Mark.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Pope, she mentioned, would have come after Mark too, so I'm not sure.
Revelation was written after Mark. Okay. So these authors might be just extrapolating something.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So here we are. Basically, when you're talking about this particular chapter of Mark, he was comparing Jesus's shining clothes and his, transfiguration to Moses's face. And then also Elijah was another symbol of a martyr. So these are all apocalyptic symbols, and they are symbols of God's exhortation in trying times. So this is a symbol of the reason why those 2 guys, they had suffered his fate, basically. Moses and Elijah had both suffered the same fate that Jesus was about to face. And so they were there to encourage him, And so it's almost to me like Peter and the guys, Peter, John, and what's his name? They got a glimpse of, these heavenly figures discussing with each other. And then, the voice of God comes and says, boom, here's my beloved son. It freaks them all out. And then the guys disappear. I mean, you think about that experience.
Yeah, that would kind of freak you out.
No one's going to believe them,
Although I wish they eavesdropped a little bit so we knew what they discussed.
I know they're on murmur. I know. But I kind of like the image of these guys coming to Jesus and comforting him. I like that image. So poor Peter, misunderstood again. I think our authors are a little bit hard on him. So, we talked about this last week, that Peter was still operating from this framework of tradition and the triumphalism. I like that word, triumphalism. So he was expecting Jesus to go into Jerusalem as this king. And so that's why he was saying to the 3 leaders, you deserve this tabernacle. And God intervened at that point, saying to Peter and everyone, this is my beloved son, listen to him. So once again, what Mark is trying to tell us is that the script is flipped. We're not talking about Messiah who's going to come in and save you all with war. We're talking about Jesus who's going to teach you what it means to build a peaceable kingdom. So Jesus is the reliable one. The traditions and your attempts to institutionalize who Jesus is is not reliable anymore. That's what Mark is saying.
You know, I don't think Peter had it all that wrong.
Well, he was part of the culture.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But, and if you think about what happened to the Ten Commandments after they brought down with Moses, they were put into the Ark of the Covenant. Where was the Ark of the Covenant? Eventually it ended up in the tabernacle. So there's a history of memorializing spiritual experiences, you know.
That's a
with
good
building
point. That's a good point.
But it still is consistent with what the authors are saying, because again, that's an institutionalized view
Right.
of the spiritual experience rather than a
Yeah.
personal one.
Yeah. Well, and go ahead, Paul.
Jane?
Yeah.
There's another rabbinical explanation for this. Some people think that this is referring to Peter mistakenly understanding that Jesus had called for the Feast of the Tabernacles, which was an annual feast where good Jews would make a pilgrimage to Jerusalem to actually be in the temple as close to the presence of God as they could be. And while they did that for the week that the feast went on, they built little huts out of cloth and wood as much as they could. And that was symbolic of the types of shelters that the children of Israel lived in during the wandering in Sinai and in the desert.
Mm-hmm.
And because it was associated with Moses, some people think that this scripture, if you take kind of the Jewish tack on it, what Peter was doing was suggesting that, well, Moses is here, it must be Feast of the Tabernacle, so I need to build a little tabernacle for these guys.
Oh, isn't that interesting?
And the Jewish people, every year build a little tabernacle thing outside.
Yep.
And they, go together and eat there in the evenings and
Yeah, the
stuff.
Feast of the Booths.
Feast of the what?
Booths, Booths. I think it might be Sukkot. Or
Sukkot. We did them in Bible school here.
Yeah, Sukkot is the name of the feast.
Look at that. You guys know your history.
Well,
I like that.
the reason I know about it is because on my high school route, I go past a real small Jewish temple thing, and every year they built their little thing out there.
Tabernacle up there.
Yeah, my
Next door
in-laws
to it.
were
Interesting.
Jewish and they had kids, so they practiced that. Although I never did see their booths.
Okay, so here we
Ours
are.
Probably didn't look like theirs did, but it was fun to make. They were food area,
So you were in the Methodist church.
No, it was right here in this room.
Oh, so you were an adult and we did this. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So once again, Jesus he ordered them to tell no one about what they had seen until after the Son of Man had risen from the dead. So they kept the matter to themselves, questioning what this rising from the dead could mean, because they did not have a concept anymore of what that meant. This is where Jesus is telling them what's going to happen in the future, and his disciples did not understand it, but they agreed to be silent for him. What do you guys think? I keep asking the same question because I'm not satisfied with any answers. Why does Jesus keep telling everybody not to say anything?
I've wondered that too, Jane.
You know?
That's the surest way of getting people to spread the word.
Yeah. Look, in some of our scriptures that we read in this book, it's been about, only the demons and only the evil recognize him. So I would understand that, you don't want them to be spreading it around. But I'm not sure why he kept telling his disciples to stay silent. Not yet. It's almost like it was like, don't talk yet.
It probably really was a matter of timing.
Yeah.
And we, again, don't have the whole story.
Yeah.
We have just Mark's remembrance of it.
Right.
He wasn't there.
Right. His stories that he had heard. Yeah.
He would not have heard the story until after Jesus was crucified.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
But there was something important in several of our scriptures to say that Jesus did not want people to talk about it yet. And, maybe because, like you said, the timing, I mean, it would hasten, unfortunately, he knew it would hasten his death if they started talking about this, because the Romans would hear and.
Well, and it could also be as simple as Jesus was a very humble man.
Yeah.
That he didn't want people to flock to him because he
Yeah.
been on the mountaintop with Elijah and Moses. So.
I have a wild theory about this, Jane.
Okay.
I think that it might be possible that this is, what they refer to as an apologetic. Sometimes when a writer of a gospel or a book in the Bible is defending why things happened the way that they did, it's called an apologetic or an apology.
Sure.
And I think, probably this didn't really become all that talked about in the early history of the church until well after Jesus was gone. And then people began to understand the story. And, if Mark is writing this down and people were saying, well, if Jesus really was the Son of God and he knew that at the time, why didn't he say anything about it? And Mark's response would be, well, he did say about it, but he told his disciples to be quiet. Therefore, we didn't hear about it. That's my theory.
That's an interesting theory.
That's a good theory.
That is, I like that theory.
Well, and they had also accused the disciples of stealing Jesus' body. And, they would have, if they'd have gone out and said, well, we just saw him, then they're more likely to be in trouble there too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of, well, and this is kind of what our authors are talking about in terms of, the Peter and the guys ask him, why do the scribes say that Elijah must come first? And Jesus said, Elijah is indeed coming first to restore all things. How then is it written about the Son of Man that he is to go through many sufferings and be treated with contempt? But I tell you that Elijah has come, and they did to him whatever they pleased, as it is written about him. So this is another foretelling. Jesus is saying that what happened to Elijah, and the authors point out that sometimes John the Baptist was called Elijah.
Yeah.
And we all know that the fate that he suffered. And so Jesus is kind of saying that this is the inevitable political destiny of truth tellers. I kind of liked that. It's the political destiny of these guys. Jesus knew it. He was walking towards it, and he's telling his people, Elijah went before me. Moses went before me. This is where I must go. That's kind of how I look at that. Which I thought was poignant. So this is that story that I accidentally read last week. So if you guys remember, I didn't put the whole story in again. So I figure you guys have read it twice now. So it's basically one of those stories where once again, when Jesus comes down, it's always this parent, and it's this father saying, help me, Jesus, because this demon is in my child. And this demon was especially powerful because he had the spirit of silencing. I thought that was interesting. The disciples could not help the boy. And when Jesus came, down from the mountain, the demon saw him and decided to throw everything at him, striking with full fury and, putting the poor boy into convulsions. And once again, Jesus is frustrated with everybody because they're missing the point. And he says, you are a faithless generation. And here's what's kind of interesting about the symbolism of this. He asks the father, how long has this boy had this affliction? And the father said, from childhood, and aims to destroy him through fire and water. So this is symbolic of the unresolved anguish and trauma that human beings at that time, and our authors are saying, and now, the trauma silences us. The anguish, the fear, all of these things, they kind of close in on us like that was the symbol of this little boy. Silence was the ultimate trauma, which is so interesting because you think about that with abuse victims, The ultimate trauma makes them mute. It makes us silent. So then Jesus says, okay, the Father says to him, if you can help us, please help us. And Jesus says, all things are possible to the one who believes. And what's interesting, and we'll get it, I don't know if it's the next one. Hang on. Well, shoot, I don't know where I put it. So the Father's prayer then is, I believe, and I'm going to keep trying to believe. So it's almost like this, okay, I am going to try it, Jesus, but I recognize that it's hard for me to believe. I thought that was an interesting, so exorcism, impotence, and prayer, that's kind of the theme of this chapter.
Can I
So,
share something here real quick?
sure.
My summer school ended Friday, but I've been taking kids over to the school for the blind. And one of the boys that we were doing, I have a pair of, because these kids need assistance. And one of the boys that we were taking, I didn't know if how much sight he had, but he also has some mental issues and physical issues. He's got a couple of deformities on his, as he walks and such. And I couldn't hear it happening, but my para was sitting right across from him, and she had been a para for him on his regular school route. He goes to Shawnee Mission Ward during the regular school year. But he's going into 10th grade, and he has other spirits, and she would call them, his demons was how they were introduced to her, and that's what she called him. But he would, talk to himself on the bus and argue with himself, and a couple of times he tried, hitting himself and all. And she would say, talk to him while he was doing this, and he'd settle down. And afterwards, when we got them delivered, then she'd tell me kind of what was going on. But, sometimes there's a mental issue that's, we think of as demons, and they probably did at that time, but it could be, different personalities that somebody's fighting within themselves.
Yeah.
And the last day of school, they sent him out with a cane, with a white cane. So he does have some sight loss, but I don't know how much.
Well, I do think we're talking about a lot of symbolism here. The exorcism is a symbol, for our struggle for faith. Those, once again, remember he's saying, the blind shall see, the deaf shall hear. This was the message all along. And how do you do that? And part of it is vanquishing that demon of silence. And that means physically in this story, but also symbolically in our lives. How do we vanquish the demon in our own lives of silence, And it's going to show up, it's kind of very clear in this little boy that it shows up in his daily life, and that means he's not right with himself in his brain, so that's why he's always arguing with himself. But,
Jane, you mentioned as part of the story of the father, and the words I think that you were trying to find are, says, I do believe, help me overcome my unbelief.
Yeah.
And I like that because it kind of ties into with what Arlene was talking about.
Yeah.
As a parent, you believe things will work out, but there's still a little unbelief there. And so we pray for
it's there.
Yeah.
And that's honesty, I think that's really a good way to go through life, is God, I am trying to believe, I am trying to have faith, but I understand my own weakness in this. And so that's what kind of that father. So our authors then say that this story really isn't about that father, because the father understood. It really is about, once again, the disciples, they couldn't heal the boy. They couldn't do it. It's their impotence. And they were just frustrated. Why couldn't they heal him? And this is when Jesus said, this kind of healing comes out only through prayer. This kind of prayer took place in remote places, not exploited by the public lair. I think it's because, somebody correct me, Jesus had just come down from the mountain that he was in prayer, and so I think in his mind, he was just so calm and quiet that it was that spirit that helped heal the boy. You guys agree with that? Is that what you think what he's saying? So this is the power of prayer. And I think, we all have differing viewpoints of the power of prayer and different times in our life, and Jesus he said it over and over and over again, the power of prayer. And I like how our authors are saying to pray is to recenter our consciousness around a faith that insists on the possibility and imperative of such transformation. Insists on the possibility. That's the kind of prayer, we've all had the desperation prayers. We've all had the sadness prayers. It's these prayers that insist on the possible. It doesn't have to happen, and I think we all are going to have those doubts like that father was saying, but he's going to try.
I love that.
Isn't
where
that-
he said, help me with my unbelief.
Yes.
Isn't that a beautiful statement?
Yes.
That's how I feel a lot of the times.
Yeah,
I want to believe, but
help me with it.
yeah.
I know that I had him saying that. Hang on a second. I'm just totally confusing myself with my order. Okay. I'll just keep going in the order that I put it, and we'll keep. So when we talk about the word in our world, I do think that this story is easy for us to understand with these symbols, So this is the self-knowledge that we must have. It's an invitation to examine the roots of our own impotence. What keeps us from having this prayer of faith and recognition, perhaps like the Father did, and definitely like what Jesus is trying to say. And our authors are saying we must engage in the difficult process of confronting the illusions that paralyze us and the unconscious power of repressed trauma that keeps us silenced. At all different degrees, you don't have to be a survivor of child abuse to understand this sentence. Trauma comes in it's a lot of different ways for people, and I think all of us at some point has had some kind of repressed trauma that has silenced us, that keeps us silent whenever, we see something. For me in my own workplace, it's this silence of when should I speak up when something I see isn't right. It's really, really hard for me sometimes.
And all of the people that have PTSD from being in war and different situations where they just didn't talk about it. Even though that may be their path to healing, but it's hard to let it out.
Now, our church, for those of us who have grown up and gone to camps and gone to reunions and gone to retreats, I was thinking about that when I was reading this part of our chapter, is the transfigurative moments come when our stories become joined in their deepest core to the gospel story, and we enjoy them in community.
So
You think about the mountaintop experiences that you've had, Now Ron gets the privilege of actually having a mountaintop experience, standing on the mountain. But I think you would agree with me that the mountaintop experiences need to be shared. You have that beautiful memory, but when you tell us about that memory, that's when your face glows. I really think that transformative, transfigurative moments need to be shared. I do think that's what they're talking about here. The divine voice asks us to listen and take seriously this journey. I like that. Take the discipleship journey seriously.
I think the power of youth camps and reunions lies in the fact that you're in a group that are there with like mind, and you're able to let go of some of your vulnerabilities.
Yes.
And be honest with those around you, because they're in the same shape.
Yep.
And so much of the time, I think that's what keeps us silent, is we don't want people to know our vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
Oh, and sometimes it has to do with shame.
Right.
That
Yeah.
But when you're in the community of camp and reunion and stuff, you just get so involved in it and separated from the world outside that you can actually come to a more spiritual.
You don't have all that distraction.
Right.
A lot of distraction out
Yeah, it's a powerful form of love, is what that is. You know, like you say, you do belong. And some of these kids who go to these camps probably don't belong anywhere, you know, and so it's just this, I think, and that's why, you know, you have the last service and everybody's crying. I remember as a kid being confused by that, because all I did was cry. And it was about the love. Oh, this is God, you know, but it was really more about that love. You know, that as I grew older, I understood that it was about this love that I had never really felt anywhere else. Jim?
Yes. Well, this was a singles reunion back in, I don't know, 2008, 9, or 10. Anyway,
Okay.
R.L. Coberly, a psychodrama class.
Psychodrama.
And he was a psychiatrist.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, real tall guy, R.L. Coberly. And so he would put in the middle a chair, and they'd be on the hot seat.
Okay.
And they would just tell the group what was really bothering them, you know, what was holding them back from growth and whatever.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
but anyway,
That's a powerful
the
exercise.
class ran out of time, so I never was
Oh.
able to go on the hot seat.
Uh-oh. We're going to have to try that, Jim. I
was
like
kind of
it.
glad I didn't have to be on the hot seat.
That's amazing for people to be able to be on that
Yeah.
hot speed and be that vulnerable. That's exactly what we're talking about.
There was one guy who had several tattoos. And
Yeah.
he had, I guess, had been in the service and all that, and he was on the hot seat, and
Yeah.
he got rid of a lot of negative stuff, you know, that
Yeah.
was bothering him and things
Yeah.
that happened in the past.
So sometimes it is
And,
about, it is about confession, and it is about sharing your burden with others.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what the authors are talking about, I thought this was another really cool imagery. Our stories live in radical faithfulness. That was interesting. But then it says, then our stories will merge into a great story, like drops of water that become rivulets, then streams and rivers, and finally rush into the ocean. Isn't that a cool image? I really like that. We experience glory when we are given the grace to know that our story is inextricably related to that greater story. And we are surrounded by a cloud of witnesses. Okay, so this is the part, we've got some time, that the authors ask us to think of a person of faith that has really hit us, you know, in terms of who can you relate to in this gospel journey? Who has helped, who is a person of faith in your life that has helped you? And it could be just a symbol of a person, you know. It could be, you know, a historical person. It could be somebody that you watched growing up, or that is a very important influence in you. And what are the attributes of that person? What is the qualities of faith that you saw that you now try to emulate? Anybody want to take a shot at that one?
Harry Black.
Harry Black.
I would say my grandmother's.
Okay.
Um,
What attributes did she have that?
Okay, so my mother's mother was she was internally strong, but outwardly she would be maybe considered meek and mild.
Ah,
She was always there for us.
okay.
My father's mother died when I was only in the second grade, but
Okay.
she was more vocal,
Yeah.
or could be.
But it was that grandmother who on the outside looked meek, but you saw her strength within.
Yeah, I mean,
I
I
like
will
that.
say I come from two grandmothers who were symbols of strength, but in different ways.
Okay, interesting. Anybody else think of somebody that just has really struck them through your life?
There are lots.
Yeah.
The first one that comes to mind is Ted Midler, who was our pastor when I was a teenager at the First Lutheran Church in Michigan. And just a very calm, gentle man. He was worked for something to do with GM, was an administrator, but that didn't come across. I mean, what came across was he was just a very loving, caring, gentle person. And you know, when I was first called to the priesthood, my mother was opposed to it, and Ted, she thought I was too young, and Ted worked with me, counseled with me, just a very wonderful man. And then from there, I jumped to somebody like John Snyder, who, you know, really, I think it influenced me a great deal as an adult. So, and he was somewhat the opposite.
I was gonna say,
could tell
he had a
joke,
powerful
he could-
voice, that
yeah,
man.
He could be very powerful.
Yes,
But you know,
yes,
you gotta love the man.
yes. It is interesting how you kind of have that two different types of strength, you know, we need them both.
I like to understand there's a multitude of them.
Yeah,
I'm thinking of some people that were church-wise related to that, but I'm also thinking of some people that professionally created a strong bond feeling
yeah,
of why did I do what I did?
yeah,
Because of relationships. My high school basketball coach, he was about 5 or 6 years old, and when he was
yeah,
a young kid, played against his brother. Okay, I mean, you know, so it's family-wise, but stayed in contact with that guy really on and off ever since.
he was an
My choir
influence.
instructor, Grayson, Henry Anderson, I had a relationship with him. I don't know if everybody did, but it was a very meaningful one. And, you know, he asked me to do some things leadership-wise within the choir, and that formed a strong
Kind
bond.
of shaped you, yeah, it shaped who you became.
Right.
That's who we're talking about here.
Yeah, and my advisor for my master's degree,
Yeah,
just always thought the world of him and the expertise that I tried to be some of those emulating things.
yeah.
So what I'm trying to get is, it's not just church for me.
Oh, no,
The whatever
yeah.
things you walk in.
Well, and we remember them, and, you know, you remember them in your career, you
Right.
remember them in your priesthood, you remember them in your life because of those attributes
Right.
that you wanted to be like that. That's why we remember them. You know, for me, it's, I don't know if you guys know who Greg Hankins is, but he was the stake youth leader when I was a kid. And he took us on this program that it was called the Journey Program. And I think it was my first aha moment of what it meant to be spiritual, because he used to say, and he put his hands together like this, and he'd be saying, we have to journey inward before we can journey outward. And of course, we made fun of him because we were in high school. But to this day, I say that to him when I see him, and it is what taught me what it meant to be spiritual. You have to go in first. Just little things like that, you know? That just, boom, they influence us the rest of our lives. That's the kind of faith, that's this cloud of witnesses that we're talking about here.
I think of Ron's mother.
Oh,
being in her home, she radiated faith. She didn't talk a lot about it,
hmm
but you felt it.
I like that, radiating faith.
She
I like
did.
that. So this journey of ours, we do have to recognize that there's going to be highs and there's going to be lows, because we're going to have those mountaintop. All of us who've been to those mountaintop experiences, you know, sometimes we come down and it's like splat, you know, and we go back out into the world, and then it's just this jolt to us, you know. But I really like how our authors are saying that no one success or failure is final. It is just a moment on the journey. Both successes and failures are a moment on the journey. Remember that. Norman Bernauer used to say that, you know, whenever he would read the word, you know, be perfect, which was kind of tricky sentence for our scriptures, you know, and it's like, okay, to him, what he learned was that's a lifelong journey of being perfect, and he liked that journey. And he says, I'm going to just, I picture him now still working on that, you know, wherever he is. So recognizing that the highs and lows are okay. And sometimes you learn, our authors actually put like a whole page worth of what you learn from failure. You know, I mean, sometimes we learn more from our failures than our successes. I can tell you, I don't remember my successful trials very much, but I remember every single failure, you know? And I remember why I failed, and I didn't do it again, you know? That's what I remember.
It's what you learn from losing that makes you win.
There you go. There you go. Coach says it. You gotta lose too. You're gonna lose, you know?
It's, you know.
Perfection.
It's learning.
Yeah.
Is what I'm trying to say. And so,
Yeah.
yeah. I have just another question I want to throw out.
Okay.
And I'm going to be judgmental.
All right. Okay.
Most of us have had those experiences and stayed with them. I know a lot of people that have had those kinds of experiences, but they're no longer participating in a way that would indicate that they had those.
Yeah. They've
And I'm not
lost.
trying to be
They've lost hope.
with that, but
Is what they've lost that faith somehow.
right.
Yeah.
And we struggle. And I struggle with, how do I help somebody get back on the path? Somebody that has experienced some of those kind of things in their lives, but yet they've lost
Yeah.
whatever.
Well,
That
Anyways,
reminds
ideas,
me,
I'm always open for suggestions.
yeah.
I want to tell the class about an experience. Now, I live in Kansas City, Kansas, not too far from state line.
Uh-huh.
I take the bus a lot,
Mhm.
and I see a lot of things every day that a lot of you people in here don't see. And well, anyway, I was going to the Walgreens at 39th and Broadway on the northeast corner.
Mhm.
Anyway, there's this guy going like this, and just a mental case. He should have been in Missouri mental health facility, but they released so many of them in the early
Mhm.
70s.
Yeah.
Yeah, they couldn't
So
take care of
anyway, he almost got hit crossing the street, and the people drive pretty wild. And every week, I see people running red lights there, and I almost got hit 2 or 3 days ago. I had the green light, but anyway, he was swaggering around, and because we were both crossing the street on the green, but he went before me and it was still red, and the car had to dodge him, you know. Anyway, I got over there and I looked at him and I pointed to the Salvation Army right next, just a little bit west of Gomer's liquor store there on the corner. And I said, right there is the Salvation Army. They will help you. And he looked at me and a whole bunch of dirty words came out. And I'm just glad he didn't hit me. But he cussed me out. And I was just trying to help him.
Yeah, I know. It
You
happens.
see,
Yeah.
and I just don't understand why our society doesn't take
Well, you think,
the initiative
yeah,
to
you
put these
think about,
people
you think,
in the institutions where they belong.
well, the institutions didn't really help them though. I
Yeah, I
mean,
think there was a lot of abuse.
yeah. You think about that experience versus the experience of the child that Arlene saw, because that is a young boy who could end up on a street like that, let's be
Very
blunt.
possibly.
But he has, I think we're at least better. Let me just say it that way. We're not good yet. And some of those people don't want to go anywhere. They want to be on the street. I
Yeah,
have
I
met
know that, but
plenty of them.
uh,
But, there is a choice as an adult.
yeah,
And here is this young boy. I don't know where he's going to end up, but he's got more resources. He's got this para that's helping him through high school. And he's got, so I think we're getting better. And this is actually exactly what the authors are talking about. We have to find, and this is something for Mission Road to think about. We have to find this common ministry in community. We need this action reflection process. We need to, you're asking Ron what to do. Well, part of it is all persons need to find a reflection in themselves. They need to face the demons. They need to face whatever is holding them back. But then in community, we can act together. So it becomes easier. No matter how painful it is, it becomes easier. When we go down to Center of Hope, I'd love for our congregation to find a day where we can just go down, not on Thanksgiving, not on Christmas, just go down, because when you talk to Chris about the kinds of experiences, and you've been down there, you talk about the experiences, and all she does is go down there and cook, but it's this joyful community experience for her. I think that is what they're talking about. It allows us to continue to evaluate. Ongoing evaluation is one of the most important spiritual disciplines of a faith community. And we can't do it for others. We can't do that for them. All we can do is what can we as our community do?
I just want to say one thing in regard to what Ron was saying. Ron, there's a whole lot of who you were talking about that's passed through Mission Road, a whole lot.
Yeah.
And if you talk face to face with them, every once in a while you find out somebody has said something that is really offensive. It would be offensive to you who wasn't even involved in any of it. So we've got a lot of that to overcome somehow. And I pray about that kind of thing, because I can just go down the road and name so many people that were loved here and taken care of here, and we felt had a sound faith, but they're just out there somewhere.
Well, and you guys got to remember, just because they're not coming here doesn't mean they don't have a faith of their own. Some people, especially our young people, have a very different journey than what we all have.
But when they feel free to come out with it, then
yeah, you can find that in discussion.
Yes.
And if there's something that's offending them, we've got to figure out a way for us to talk about it, for them to feel free to tell us,
Right.
and so we can make it better. That's that freedom.
Exactly.
That's
is it
Jim.
true that the Church of the Resurrection has stolen away some of our people?
Well, stolen
Church of
is
the
not a good
Well,
word.
they haven't
That
stolen.
real
They haven't
fancy
stolen.
church is that
I can
way
tell you
out there.
I can tell you that they give more to their children,
That's how
than we
they
can
keep,
get.
that's how they get them.
So,
Jim,
Yeah.
is they
We
take
have
care of
lost
kids.
the families with children
Yeah.
because we don't have the large groups that we used to have.
We don't have any.
I know.
They have lots of activities.
Yeah. So here's this heartfelt cry from the Father. This is what I was looking for. I knew I had it in a slide. I believe, help me in my unbelief. It was the most genuine expression, is what I should have said, of prayer. So in prayer, we journey toward the hidden places of our being, where if we are honest with ourselves, we encounter our brokenness and lack of freedom. Unbelief is a despair that is dictated to us by the powers and principalities of this world. It is a fixed life script that says nothing can change. That's the despair that we're talking about here. I can't change. The world's never going to change. So it's this father's heartfelt cry for compassion. It's him saying, I believe, but I know that I still need help. Help me in my unbelief. That's the most genuine type of prayer. So what is spirituality in social action? I really liked that term too. I think our authors come up with some pretty good terms. So prayer is personal and communal, and it's wrestling with our demons within us that tempt us to abandon the way of Jesus. Through prayer, we can cast out whatever is silencing us, making us docile, causing our hopelessness. We cannot disarm these demons until we name them. I like that. Name them and face them together. So perhaps those of us who have people in our lives who don't come to church, all we can do is help them name their own demons, face their own demons, and free them to go on their own journey. It doesn't mean they're going to come back here. I don't think that should be our goal. Our goal should be free them, find their own spiritual journey. That should be our goal for all of the people around us. And, we have this community. We can say it to each other easier than we can say it to like my workplace. That scares me to death to think of me saying things like that. Every once in a while I have. I will tell you, I've gotten a little brave and tipped my toe into talking about spiritual things with people at my work, but not very often because it's scary. So Jesus is asking us to develop a spirituality of social action. And that starts with a prayer life that empowers us to go into public discipleship. Isn't that interesting? Maybe we should be praying for each other to figure out a way to go into some kind of social action. I never thought about that. Maybe that's where our prayer should be.
I kind of tip my toe in that because, there are people on the corners begging for money.
Mm-hmm.
And I never want to give them money.
Right.
I wish I had, but I will give them water.
Yep.
A bottle of water.
Yep.
So that's my.
Your son, I don't know if you remember, your son, John, told a story one time where he used to work downtown with like where I work. And he saw, it was just like your experience, Jim. He saw this old lady that he didn't want to give her money.
Yep.
So he walked in and got McDonald's for her. Do you remember this story? He comes back out to give her McDonald's and she threw it back at him.
Oh, I do. Yeah.
It was definitely one of those experiences is that if they're not ready to hear it, they're not going to hear it,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe, I don't know what they need. I don't know what they need. Maybe they just need you to help them cross the street, Jim. Maybe that's it, as simple as that might be.
Well, if I would have been very close to him, I would have probably got hit by the car.
Yeah.
The one that he dodged.
Yeah. Find where they're at. Find where they're at and help them face their own demons. I think that's what this chapter is trying to teach us, is that we've all got our own demons. And so until we can share in prayer with each other, we can't move forward. It's all about social action. I like that. All right. This is like a sermon. These chapters are like sermons to me.
Yeah.
So Jane,
Yes.
talking about that father,
Yeah.
a tune came in my head. So you'll appreciate this. The Medical Mission Sisters that we've talked about before, who did the story of the Good Samaritan. Remember that?
Where was this?
The story of the Good Samaritan, the Medical Mission Sisters, the music group from our childhood.
I don't remember them.
Yeah, you do. We talked about it.
Tell me what I can remember.
Anyway, I'm trying to remember that tune, but the other tune came to me. One of their songs was "Help Me, Help My Unbelief," and so it was funny that you hit on that, so much today. because I thought, I know that song, and I went and looked it up, and
Sing it.
it's,
You could sing
I-
it for us?
I can't sing it for you, but it's Lord, I believe, help my unbelief.
Yeah.
I would not grieve, take away my grief. The Lord is present, run to receive. His word is spoken, let us believe.
There you go. I wonder if it was taken from that scripture.
I'm sure it was. And that was written in 1968.
The Father says both. He says, I believe and help me with my unbelief. So I like how you said both
He
things.
said both.
Yeah.
That's a lot of honesty.
Mhm.
That's good.
So I think they were the people, I gotta look that up too. I'll tell you later.
we'll talk
I'll
about
have to
it,
look
yeah.
Morty.
You can help
No.
my memory.
Yeah, I just thought that was funny.
All right. I don't know who's doing next week. Please tell me it's not me. Okay.
Paul, is it you?
Yep.
It's
Me.
Paul.
Chapter 13 next week. In defense of the least. There we go. Okay.
Paul has next week.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you, everybody. Okay.